If you have a Bible with you, I'm going to be speaking from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26. Thank you. And they passed out a booklet to you called Targeted Prayer that I'm going to talk about a little bit for you. And then when we're over, we have 3 devotionals. They're 30-day, very simple devotionals for you. For each of you, there's 3 of them. Thank you. Friday night closing checklist. Okay. I'm finished already and I just got here. I've been in the ministry for 54 years. And I've traveled literally around the world, spent a summer in all the communist countries with the underground church back in the 70s. Been to the war zones, Nicaragua, Central America, and Iraq. Seen the Lord work in many death rows around the world. Seen him work with terrorists and negotiated with people to get Americans released. It ended up after one of them getting out of, I don't want to mention the country, but a 350-pound man came from that country. And I was told to meet this person in a nearby liquor store. And I was in a broom closet, and he was this big. So since I was a boy, I always figure out this guy's going to probably hurt me really bad. But it comes from being in foster home. I realize I have to size them up and how badly can I hurt them before they can hurt me worse. And this guy, when you're in a broom closet on a chair, there's no way you can barely even move left or right. So he's talking the whole time and making verbal threats in a way. He wanted to get some information of how I had somebody's bedside telephone number. And that allowed an American to get released. And I wasn't going to tell him, of course. But then he made one mistake. And it was a verbal mistake, so I didn't have to get into any physical at all. And I just said to him, "Does your boss know that you're asking me for $1 million?" No, please, don't mention who, because I knew who his boss was, and I went right to him. He was one of the leaders. And so they figured I was CIA, and I said, "I'm not CIA, I'm CIO. Everybody I see, I owe." So I just watched the Lord move this big guy that if he just fell on me, I would have been crushed. But I have seen the Lord, I have seen him do things at the highest levels, from the White House to negotiating with the Kremlin, to little things, to debriefing the Marines coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq at Camp Lejeune a couple times. I've just seen him work miracles. He healed me of brain damage. I lost my wife and kids. I went insane on LSD in the 60s. I never had the hope to ever be a normal human being again, ever. I knew it. I couldn't talk. If I talked, you wouldn't have understood what I was saying. I wasn't one of the guys with a sign, "We'll work for food," at the end of a freeway. Somehow I made it for about 2 years. I went insane, literally. Lost my wife and kids and our home in Irvine. And somebody introduced me to Jesus, and I went to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and met Pastor Chuck Smith. And for 5 years, I went to his men's prayer meeting. And the first month or second month after I accepted Jesus, he and the elders laid hands on me on Saturday night with oil, and I was instantly healed. Like electrical bolt went. I had a bag over my head, hands behind my back, and a guy with a gun to my head. And I went down on my knees, and I knew I'd be dead in 5 minutes less. And I knew I was going to hell. I just knew that. And Krishna, Buddha, a couple other idiots came hovering in the spirit, laughing at me, and I said, "Take me to God." And they said, "This is as far as we take man, is to death." And I was so ticked. because I had a lot of anger from my childhood. And if I got in a fight, I didn't know I got hit. I'd just get into a rage and just keep going at it. And I was really angry. I'm going to die, and you deceived me, all the Eastern philosophies. And then Jesus, literally, it was him. Best I can say is that he was the felt board Jesus I remember from a Sunday school class, you know, the sheep on his shoulder. It was just Jesus. And I was on the edge of darkness, hell was below, and I looked up and I said, it was you all along. And he said, Michael, and only two people call me Michael, my mom and my wife. In both cases, I'm always in trouble. He called me Michael. He said, you've believed in me, and some of you may believe in him, but you've never received me. I was 26 years old. I said, how could you forgive a man like me? And he did. And the night that I accepted him, I got baptized with the Holy Spirit, and it was like standing under a liquid waterfall of love. I always look for truth, peace, and love. And I just dropped to my knees. I was in a room, a Sunday school room. I responded to an invitation, and the hippie dude came around, and I was the oldest guy at 26 in the room. And the girls started singing, and guys lifting their hands. I said, oh, this is weird. When he got to me, he said, I'm going to lay hands on you, and I got ready to take him down. And I said, you're not going to touch me. He said, hey, just relax, relax. And I relaxed, and he prayed for me, and boom, the Lord broke all that anger, all that pride. And I had 3 members of the Communist Party living in my house. I rented rooms to, and I wasn't a communist. One of them was my brother. So they were the leaders of Orange County that were causing all the riots and what you see on now. Same thing happened in the 60s. Same protocol, it's just so ridiculous. You ask them from the river to the sea, ask one of those communist trained agitators, what's the name? I keep forgetting. What's the name of that river? What's the name of that sea? You all know it is Jordan River to the Mediterranean. And that saying means murder and slaughter all Jews in that area. And you start going to UCLA and you talk to the students and they're yelling that out. When they find out, they're ashamed. So you're into murdering people. No, it's just a song. No, it's not a song. So anyhow, the Lord took me, and my wife saw such a change. She accepted Jesus. And my mom, at 60 years old, she said, you're no longer my son. And I said, well, technically, no, but I am your son. And she was born again at 60. And then Sandy's dad, who is a Fortune 500, really wealthy, successful guy, and I was a beach bum, and her mother both accepted the Lord. And he just started working. So when I came to San Diego, I'd been at Costa Mesa for 5 years, working directly as one of the first interns that Chuck Smith took under his arm and helped. And I came to San Diego for 10 hippies. They asked me, would you come down and teach us the Bible? I said, it's too far. I couldn't even afford the gas money. And it was a 2-hour round trip. And I said, okay, for the summer of 1974, I'll give you a chapter a week of the Gospel of Mark. And then don't ever ask me again, because I'm just busy. I was doing a lot with the Lord. And those 10 people grew to 25. And I said, wow. Well, Calvary at that time had 25,000 people. And, the revolution was going on, and it was great. So anyhow, those 10, since I was in charge of Maranatha Music, I had access to all the popular bands. I said, would you come down to San Diego? I'll pay your gas, basically. And I gave them, we got to 75, and I gave them each 2 flyers for a concert in the gospel. And that night at the junior high school auditorium in Point Loma, 150 people showed up. So those 10 people became like you. They went out and got people. So I said, by faith, I had asked another group to come the next week, and I brought 300 by faith. And the next week there was 300 there. And then it grew to 1,000 the first year, and then 1,000 the next year. And the third year we rented the sports arena and had 7,500 people for New Year's Eve, and 450 people accepted the Lord, and it just went on and on and on. And so if somebody's interviewing me, and I said, you're making me sound like a newspaper, Union, San Diego. I said, you're acting like I'm a celebrity or somebody important. I'm not important. They said, well, you got thousands of people coming here. I said, yeah, but that's not me. And that's when I realized, no, got a disciple. And so I started sending men out. And there's about 150 to 250 churches that have grown out of those 10 people around the world. It's a wonderful thing to see. And I look at all of you, and it's an honor to be in your presence, because I can see hurt and pain and memories and thoughts and families, and I can read you pretty well. So it's a privilege for me to be able to look at you and see you and know that you love the Lord. And I want to tell you, I'm here tonight to tell you He loves you. There's nothing you ever do to stop Him from loving you. You can break His heart, He'll still love you. He's madly in love with you. We're at war. I heard it as a boy. I had two Marine uncles. They both became cops for 32, 33 years in Oregon State Police. My stepfather, when I got out of foster care, was Army in the Philippines during the war. I understand the mindset. At 18, I was at Fort Ord, California. And I heard there was going to be something. I had a brother in Intel in the Air Force. And it would happen from the inside. It happened with our electrical system and our water system. And that was in the 1950s. My brother would tell me all of these things because he knew I didn't understand what he was talking about, so I wasn't going to break any secrets. But he was telling me all sorts of things. And now I see it, that we've been taken over from the inside. And now they're just parsing it out and breaking it down. It's very sad. It's a heartbreak. Lieutenant General William Boykin is a very good friend of mine, and he was head of intelligence for the Pentagon in the Army, 3 stars. And he told me some things. I thought, well, I heard about that when I was a boy, and it's happening, huh? He was in Somalia, and all those Americans got killed. And I read his book, and I said, there's 4 hurts in your life when we first met that are almost irreparable without Jesus, that you could make it through these. And Jesus is number 1 for General Boykin. And he's come to San Diego and spoken a few times. But the story is the head of the warlord that killed all the Americans, Black Hawk Down, that was General Boykin's tour duty. And there's a scene where the bodies are all in the back of a 5-ton, or I know it wasn't a 2.5, but a pretty big truck. And they were going to make notifications. He said, I will make every notification to every wife, every mother, every father. I'll make it, nobody else. But it describes when the door opened to the back of the truck and how the blood poured out. And that just really rocked me. And I thought, wow, this man I'm sitting with, he lived it. So he goes to the warlord. Intel grabs the warlord. And he's cuffed and he's in an interrogation room. And after a little bit of time, the smart aleck warlord, the door opens. The intel officer leaves, and in comes the general. Well, the general is 6'6", 6'5", and about 260, but all muscle. In the Grenada conflict, he had a .50 caliber go through his arm and basically had it hanging there. And they said, we're going to have to take your arm off. He said, no, you're not. Jesus will keep my arm on. And they worked, and he kept his arm. Just a man of faith, great man of faith. So he walks up, he's got the big pistol here, and the warlord's sitting there, and he says, and he's nervous because he's such a big man. He says, are you the man that's here to kill me? And he leaned down and said, no, I'm the man that's here to tell you, our God has beat your God. I said, you said that to him? I said, I did. President Bush got really upset with me, but I said that to him. So I've always been in good shape. I work out 3-4 times a week in the gym, and I walk 2-3 times every day, well over a mile. But out of the blue, my doctor in my annual physical said, have your heart checked. And I said, there's nothing bad in my heart. Anyhow, I had to have a 4-way bypass immediately, and I should have died. I shouldn't be standing here right now, that's for sure. I had no symptoms at all. And but 2 of my arteries were 100%, so I should have been dead. One was 50%, and then one in my shoulder was blocked. I said, I can't believe this is happening. But it was there that the Lord spoke to me in a whole new way. And he's spoken to me in some pretty scary spots, but I've never been afraid. I just trust him. I love him. He's given me 6 great kids and 21 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. I'm not a Mormon. I'm not a Catholic. I just have a beautiful wife that loves me. I've always trusted Jesus. I don't go for money. I don't ask to speak for money. And he's always worked miracles. And some of the people he's put me in front of, the untouchables, I call them. There's no way a guy from the streets of Portland, Oregon would be having dinner with these people. And I realized what a great deal to be an ambassador for Jesus Christ. We're all ambassadors for him. And he spoke to me about, you have an Air Force, and I'm a pilot. I've flown for many years, from tail draggers to multi-engines to instrument rating to jets to twin engines. And I always loved flying. And I heard this voice say, we have a United States Air Force. I thought, well, of course, am I talking to myself now in the hospital? And it took me in the hospital to get that. And then we have a United States Space Force. And I've seen pictures of the weapons, and it dawned on me, is God actually going to let man off of this planet with weapons? Think of that. That's his glory is out there. And we already know what's going to happen. A brother is going to kill somebody in the International Space Station, or one of the women's going to get raped by 2 or 3 guys. And sinful hearts will always be sinful without Jesus Christ. So I thought, wow. So then I asked if I could be the #1 chaplain for the Space Force. And the Lord said, you're too old. I said, okay, I'm willing. So it came to me, we need a United States prayer force. So I started asking the Lord 2 years ago for 1 million prayer warriors to enlist, because we're the prayer force. And you can just go to MikeMacintosh.com, and it'll ask no personal information, just your email, so you can get the weekly emails. You get free books. I'll send you all sorts of prayer books and insights behind the scenes, some of them, that you can particularly pray for America. And my granddaughter's put together a catalog of every elected official in America by the state. And the people go through that, and they start praying. And I thought it was interesting, in Louisiana, the week that we prayed for from the governor on down to the people in charge of Louisiana, is when the Lord raised up a born-again, Spirit-filled Christian to be the Speaker of the House. Boy, they're trying to get rid of him in his Bible, because he is fearless. And it's just interesting. I was with Franklin Graham recently, and I went with him. He asked me to come to pray with him and for him and his team, 150 people on the 10 border cities. And so I got a hold of the prayer force and said, here's all the cities. And I took every city and got their power structure. And I have a picture, because I've been with San Diego PD for 42 years as a chaplain and as a reserve officer prior. And there's a sheriff on duty. There were 2 of them. There's only 5 in that area of the county, the largest in Texas. And we had to get a hotel room 1 hour away. The town was so small, 3,500 people. The high school football bleachers, this field, only held 500 people. But that Saturday afternoon, 1,500 out of 3,500 in the city came to get the gospel of Jesus Christ when Franklin got up and preached. I thought, this is amazing. And because I understand cops and I work with them all over the country, from Ground Zero to Oklahoma City bombing, major events that I've called out to, I always shake hands with them wherever they are. So I was watching this one, and I'm off to the side of the stage, and there's some Secret Service people that are in charge of nobody getting on the stage. And here's a sheriff next to me with his camera videoing the crowd. So I was up against the bus, and he had to get out, and I said, hey, come out this way. He was kind of trapped, and big speakers next to him. And I said, you're looking at all your criminals, are you? And putting them down to who's here, the bad guys? And he said, no. He said, it is so good that you people are here. Nobody comes to our town. And to think it's about God, this has never happened before. I said, I'm happy to hear that. Then he took my picture. I said, oh, come on. This sergeant up by the bleachers, I watched him through the 30-minute message work his way down, looking down every aisle. You know, he's looking for a bomb or whatever, just checking, making sure everybody's legit. And he gets to the end, and Franklin's now given the gospel that Jesus Christ died on the cross for you. He died for your sins. He was buried in a grave for you, and God raised him from the dead, and you can have eternal life if you'll give your heart to Jesus. That officer became a person, not a non-duty officer. The hat went off, he bowed his head, and he prayed and asked Jesus Christ to come into his heart. The reason I tell you this particular story is that when you do what the Bible says about prayer, pray for those that are in authority, starting with the kings. That prayer that comes to that authority trickles down to all the people under their authority. I personally put the sheriff's name to the prayer force. Pray for this sheriff, and this is the chief. Pray for the chief. So I met all sorts of cops. The first cop I talked to told me about a murder he had just come from. He hadn't talked to me more than 3 minutes. They don't open up to strangers. I said, so what's the problem? Well, the boy in the bag was the same age as my son. I understand where he is immediately. He just wanted to keep pouring out and out, but it wasn't the place or the time. But that was what prayer did. Open that officer up. So I'm going to challenge you. And I think I have the authority from heaven to say, there's only one way out for America. And I'm not even talking America anymore. I'm talking Americans. Evacuation planet Earth is coming soon. Jesus is coming back. But what about all these people around us? 338 million of them. That a strong delusion has them thinking they can be a man and a woman, or a dog, or a binary, or any animal they want to be. You think that's not delusion? They're delusional. And the media has been taken over. It's nothing but hate, left side or right side. Both of them are angry. God's not angry. He loves us. But God's people, I'm high mileage dude. In the last 4 years since COVID, the church has fallen asleep. I know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pastors. I spoke last November to 2,000 pastors and gave every one of them one of these and invited them to help me pray for America. You know how many enlisted? 50. Then I went to a church with 3,500 people. The following Sunday, each one got one, 50 people. Out of 5,500, 100 people said, yeah, we're really concerned for our country. Then I go to Foley, Alabama, and there's a church of 250 people. There's 6,500 people in the town. But the pastor is so on fire, and he's from Southern California, and he's so on fire, he became the sheriff's personal spiritual chaplain. He's touching those 6,500. He got pastors from Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, and Alabama to come And we spent a Saturday with them. They all said, we want to be baptized with the Holy Ghost. We need the power of God. The people are asleep, we're asleep. They admitted it. They got in a circle in the sanctuary and held hands. My wife is in the side room with all their wives, and they were praying at the same time, unbeknownst to them. And God moved on that little town. It's only our hearts that are holding back God's blessings, and they come through his prayer. So most Christians do not pray. If they do, they think he's Santa Claus. And it's bless this, bless me, bless whatever. So focus your prayers. I've seen God take 1 million Bibles into China back in the 70s and 80s. I've seen him do things through prayer that are unbelievable. You always start. When I was in the firing range as an 18-year-old, I remember that the firing officer, the range master, said, I can guarantee all of you men here tonight, as you open up with these tracers, I can guarantee you, if you aim at nothing, 100%, you're going to hit it. Then I became a reserve police officer in my 40s, and the range master at San Diego's range says, I can guarantee you, if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it. I said, well, I remember that from 30 years ago. So, yeah, that's the problem. We're not hitting the target. The target starts in prayer with you and the Lord. You don't run into your dad's house and say, give me $50. You work him a little bit, don't you? Just go into his throne room with awe and, Lord, I'm not worthy to be in this place with you praying right now. Let him just tell you how much he loves you before you even open your mouth in prayer. Two greatest assets you have is not stocks, bonds, money, cash, or a Ferrari. Number one is your family. Number two is your friends. So the second ring is you start praying for your family by name. Now, I never really wrote them out, but with that many kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, I said, well, when it first came off the printing press, I went back here. Each circle has a page for you. And I'd suggest you just copy the page so that you can keep it going, or I'll send you more. So pray for that. And I realized just to pray focused for 4 children out of 6, and to start 2 of them with their 8 kids, before I even got to the others, or the great-grandkids, or the grandkids, it took me an hour. I'll say, oh, Lord, bless Mindy, bless David, bless Jonathan, bless Philip. Oh, Lord, thank you so much for Megan. Bless her. Oh, what a wimp I am. We're at war. I have an 18-year-old, really handsome, smart, good football player. I taught him a couple of chords in one of my guitars, and every time he'd come from Arizona, he'd, Papa, show me this. Okay, well, I'll show you that. And he's Eddie Van Halen. He's going all over the place. And where'd you learn that? I just listened all day, and he just had a gift. But his mom and dad went through a divorce, and it really hurt. He couldn't sleep, and a friend said, go to Snapchat. And he went to get a sleeping pill. And the toxicology report said there was enough fentanyl in it to kill 10 full-grown men. He never woke up. The old me hasn't been alive for many years, but I found out where the guy lived that sold it to him. Found out his dad was a big dealer in Phoenix. I wasn't a Christian in what I was thinking, because before I knew Jesus, I would have taken care of that and nobody would have ever known. And then I had to say, Jesus, forgive me. Please forgive me. I pray for those people. You'll save their souls. You go to your friends. So I have this dog that was rescued at the time he died. We inherited her and her 6 puppies. One of his brothers moved in with us the last 3 years. And I take this dog and we walk 2 or 3 times a day. She's the best trained dog. Whoever lost her, I feel sorry for him. But I pray at night and at noon and in the morning, every house I walk by. My whole street. I see the people. Some of them won't talk. Some of them, hey, how you doing? Good to see you again. Love your dog. My dog knows everybody in the street. So we walk a mile this way, half mile, let quarterback come around. We go the other way because there's an Indian Sikh with his turban on and his wife, and he's quoting the Bhagavad or something out loud as he walks down the middle of the street. And he's just a gentleman. So I pray for him, and I go that way in the evening because that's where he comes. And I go that way in the morning because that's the way he passes, and he doesn't know it. I said, sir, yes. Sari, in India, you'd be Sari. Yes. You know Indian? No, I don't know a word of it. I studied Hinduism years ago. Oh, now I see people washing their car. I see you in the grocery store. Do you remember the blind man? Remember his eyes and Jesus spit and made mud? That's one of the grossest stories I think I've ever read. You're the Lord and you're spitting in this guy? But he says, what do you see? Well, I see men like walking like trees blowing in the wind. And Jesus touched him a second time, and he had clear vision. Now grasp this if you can. We pretty much, unless we're really prayer warriors, have blurred vision. It's almost impossible for me to go into a service station and pump gas or to walk into a Vaughn's and not have clear vision to get your faces in my mind. Now, I don't know what you're buying that beer for, but you look 21. I'm not going to bother you. And you're over buying biscuits or something, and you're getting the gravy. I'm not really concerned about what you got in your basket. I'm just going to stop right across here from you and look at the Cheerios and read how many carbs are in it. And Lord, could you see the man there with the hat on? He really is a cool guy, I can tell. But could you help him with whatever's hurting him? And the lady that's getting the biscuits, she needs something special from you, Lord. And then walk on. I don't rush through anymore. They're around us. Most of them aren't going to make it. You may be the only person praying for your brother or your sister in the whole world. So your neighbor, your family, your relationship with God, and then Oceanside. California is in great shape. You don't need to pray for it. Oceanside in California. And then the United States of America and her territories. So that's what this is about. And if you take it slowly and you start doing it, I've got boosted prayer coming for you next, and a book called The Gethsemane Man, which I'd like to read part of it to you right now. 26th chapter, Matthew, verse 31. Jesus said unto them, so he's talking to us, all you shall be offended because of me. Now in context, he's talking to them, of course. This very night, for it is written, isn't it interesting? He goes to the Word of God. I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. But after I'm risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. Now he's our Lord and our Master, so he's got to be Larry, Curly, and Moe's Lord. I mean, Peter, James, and John. Peter answered and said unto him, though all men shall be offended because of you, yet will I never, well, that's a bold statement, be offended. Can you imagine the arrogance? Jesus said to him, truly, I say unto you that this night before the cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. Peter says to him with all of his spiritual pride, though I should die with you, yet will I not deny you. Likewise also said all the disciples. Okay, you could leave all of that out and just do the next 5 or 6 verses. Chuck Smith taught me a text without a context is a pretext. I have no idea what that means. I was no good at English. And I'd say, very good, Pastor Chuck, that's great. I'll use it all the time. So if you're an English person, you understand what that means. But you need the context. And in light of this being added to it, it puts us in the picture. Because in the 9th chapter of Mark, Jesus takes the 3 guys, Larry, Curly, and Moe, Peter, James, and John, up the high mountain, and he transforms into the new body they're going to have, and that his glorious body already is. And up pops Moses and Elijah, and they're in awe, and they don't know what to say. But Peter says, I think we should build 3 tabernacles here. It's almost like saying, let's have a fun zone over here and a Disney World here, and let people come from around the world and see this. They so missed it. And then a cloud came over, and God spoke and said, this is my son. Listen to him. He wasn't saying goodbye to the law and the prophets, but he was saying what you need is right here. He came to fulfill the law and the prophets. And they go down the mountain, and what do? They argue about who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom. Wow, we're something. We're really something. And what happens? They get to the bottom of the mountain, and there's a battle going on with the scribes and the Pharisees with a daddy, a broken-hearted daddy, arguing about religion. And then when he sees Jesus, he runs to him. He said, hey, what's going on here? And he stops everybody. I came to get help, but they couldn't help me, the religious goofballs, and your disciples couldn't help me. When I was 26 years old, I was good for nothing until that moment I accepted Jesus. I don't ever want to be a good for nothing as a Christian man. I want to fight for the helpless and the homeless and the people that don't have the blessings that I have. They don't have to become Christian to accept God's love, but that may be what makes them become a Christian. That they see it like you and I did. We saw it, we heard it, we felt it. So Jesus says, what's the deal? Your boy says, yeah, he's a broken-hearted daddy. Imagine, he's got Larry, Curly, and Moe, and a few other guys here, 9 more, just like them, that have this concept of religious, and we're with the miracle worker, and crowds see us standing next to him for the photos. It's just so ridiculous. Well, he has a demon, and the demon throws him into the fire and tries to kill him. Oh, that'd be horrible. Trying to, I still smell the flesh from Ground Zero. I was on a special team, and there were 25 of us that were handpicked to be special air disaster chaplains. And you had to have a master's degree. You had to have, I got hundreds, if not thousands of hours, critical incident stress management, and a law enforcement chaplain. And I had the honor of being part of that. And our security clearance was actually from a resolution from Congress. No individual or organization could stop your forward progress. So you could walk up and say, I'm with the CIA, and I pull mine out, I'm from the CIO. And sorry, here's my ID. And I got to have access with the governor and the mayor and every police officer. I'm still counseling police officers 22 years later, 21 years later. Imagine the senior son, or even smelling his leg burning or something. And then in the water, he can't go swimming, can't jump in the pool, he can't be a regular boy. And these 9 guys, and Jesus took the 3 best apparently with him, they couldn't see a broken-hearted daddy. Do you know how many broken-hearted daddies are in Oceanside? With all the fentanyl and all the marijuana that's in Oceanside High School? Think of it. All the young girls that are walking the streets tonight, I saw as I was pulling up. There's a lot of broken-hearted daddies. And if we can't see that part of the problem, We're pretty shallow. So Peter is standing there and boasting, even though I die with you, I don't even know it's what he should have said, but he didn't. So he comes down the mountain and sees that. But here he says, then came Jesus with them into a place called Gethsemane. And he said unto the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. Now notice that. We're going to glide over it for a moment. He took with him Peter, the two sons of Zebedee. He began to be, and underline the word sorrowful in the person's Bible on your left-hand side. Just reach over and underline it for him. Sorrowful. And very heavy. That word heavy actually translates troubled. This is the creator of the universe. He's feeling your sorrow. The weight that you carry. The cross you carry. Sit here. He's going to teach him. And he said unto them, look at this. My soul is exceedingly, that's an extension word, not just sorrowful, it's exceedingly sorrowful. And some of you have wept yourselves asleep at night, even unto death. He's feeling what you're feeling. Stay here. Now look at this. Watch with me. I forget the number. I shouldn't have. In 2019, before COVID came out, I think it was 19,000 churches in America closed down. Now there's about 1,500 a week. Do you remember Barack Obama? Maybe 6 months into his time, I remember a speech he gave. He said, America is not a Christian country. A Muslim-trained president is telling us the gospel had nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States of America when 52 pastors signed the Declaration and the Constitution. It just didn't make sense how these things happen. He went a little further, and he fell on his face. The burden of the world, and through prayer, you fall on your face. And he prayed, saying, oh, my Father, if it be possible, anything's possible, all things are possible with God. Let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. And he comes now back to the disciples, and he found them asleep. What? You're watching Jesus go through this for society, and you don't care? He said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me just 1 hour? Now be honest, have you ever spent 1 hour uninterrupted praying? Reverend W.J. Willis, I met him at 86 years old. We had a project going 1 million Bibles into China. We were in Pacific Palisades at a senator's house, and there were 300 very wealthy people that were going to help finance the 1 million Bibles. It was 2 747s to fill 1 million Bibles. There had to be a tugboat that was $350,000 in those days. It'd be $1 million today, probably. Had to have a special barge that could have it all on there and then sink and turn some valves and everything saran wrapped or something so it wouldn't get wet. Then there was the training off the coast of the Philippines and the coast of China. And then there were manuals this big of who we were on our T-shirts, Scientific Organization of Bugs in the Water or something. I forget what the cover was. And the reason it was in Philippines and in China, because the books were in that, and the Chinese wouldn't be able to read the Philippines, and the Philippines couldn't read the Chinese, and everybody was speaking English, talking to whoever was going to interrogate you, so it was so confusing, they just say, move on. These two places, according to the scientists on the teams, are the only two places in the world that has this bug in it in the coast off the surf, and that was where they had to practice. And that was the cover. On an early morning, prior to sunrise, the Boston whalers were taken off the back of the tug, the ropes were tied, pulled them into the beach, ran up onto the beach. They tied up all the ropes and got them anchored there. And then as the sun starts coming up, the tide started coming back in. They all floated. And then that stopped. And the tide was going out. And now 20,000 Chinese came on bicycles, tricycles, walking, hitchhiking, trucks, pickups, cars, motor scooters, anything, wheelbarrows, grabbing the million Bibles and taking them throughout the country. It was fantastic. So the director of the project, he was a Marine. And he had a breakfast at Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong. And an intel officer from the U.S. Marines came to him and said, "Hey, Doug, where were you on June?" He said the date. "What were you doing?" He said, "Oh, I was busy." He said, "And we saw some strange things on satellite off of the coast of China. Lots of people and what looked like a lot of Americans on a scientific boat. Do you know anything about it?" "I know nothing about that." I can't tell you the number, but tens of millions came to know Jesus because of those Bibles. It took lots of prayer, huge amounts of prayer. America needs it. I'll close with this thought here for you. Watch and pray. Couldn't you watch for an hour? Then he says, watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. There's why you watch, and that's why you pray. Otherwise, temptation is going to grab every one of us. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's what holds you back from praying. He went away the second time, and he prayed, "Oh, my Father." Notice the persistence in his prayer. The same subject a second time. "If this cup may," now we know he spent at least an hour. Now he's into his second hour. "Oh, my Father, this cup may not pass away from me except I drink it. Your will be done." And he came, look at this, and he found them asleep again. And their eyes were heavy. Oh, the poor things. Heavy eyes. Oh, how sad. He left them and went again away and prayed the third time, saying, notice, the same words. So be persistent in prayer. Don't say, "Well, he didn't pay attention. I'm going to change my vocabulary and restructure my sentences, and I'm going to do it in New King James now instead of Old King James when I talk to him." No. He came a third time, and then he saw his disciples, and he said to them, "Sleep on now. Take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise up." Should have said, "Wise up." "Rise up. Let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me." In a book, I'm got all 7 of his books put into one book right now that I just rebought by E.M. Bounds. Great stuff on prayer. He quoted Francois Fenelon, who was born in 1651, died in 1715. This is a part of a prayer. "In God's name, I beseech you, let prayer nourish your soul as your meals nourish your body. Let your fixed seasons of prayer keep you in God's presence through the day, and may his presence frequently be remembered through it, be an ever fresh spring of prayer. Otherwise, you just keep springing up with more prayer because of his presence. Such a brief, loving recollection of God renews a man's whole being, quiets his passions, supplies light and counsel in difficulty. Gradually, it subdues the temper and causes him to possess his soul in patience, or rather gives it up to the possession of God. I don't expect anybody to remember that, but it was beautiful, wasn't it? That's a man that knew how to pray. And I found as I get older and I spend more time praying, I see and I hear more. and I have more power, though I'm 80 years old. And everybody else, my doctor told me at my physical last week, do you know that 50% of all men 75 years old in America are dead? He said, you're doing really well, Mike. I said, well, thank you. I'm going back out and preach again. Peter, well-meaning like all of us, said, we'll never leave you. And then said the disciples, be careful with your tongue, because you're influencing people, and it could be in a negative way. They all sided with, well, yeah, we're... Not one of them fell to their knees and said, oh, God, forgive me, I'm a sinful man. My pride is in the way. And that's the point I'd like to leave you with. Well-meaning. Jesus tells the truth. Pete, be careful. Your pride is going to lead you to temptation. You need to be praying. Gethsemane. It means oil press. If you've never been to Israel, it's still there today. And it's got these gnarly olive trees. This is where they had a press, and they'd get the olives and press it and make oil. But they say, my first trip there in the 70s, I remember they told us these were seeds when Jesus dropped drops of blood like sweat. And they grew up being gnarly. But since then, I've read other things that they were actually planted in the 12th century or something. But it's the point, there's no place like it on the earth that has these gnarly olive trees. He prayed so hard, and they slept so deeply. It's not a time for our country if you really love America. And I know I've raised my right hand, as many of you, that I will swear to defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. I counseled a police officer not too long ago in a very large city, very large department. And he said, how do I handle this as a Christian man? I said, well, tell me the story. A man I've been in the department with for 20 years just showed up last week coming wearing a woman's dress. I said, is that the story? I've known him. He's got 4 kids. He's got a wife. But all of a sudden, he's a woman. And the chief up on the 7th floor can't do a thing about it. And the mayor can't do anything. The city manager can't do anything. And the point he brought was, I raised my right hand. How can I be on the streets with somebody that doesn't know if he's a man or a woman, and he's carrying a gun? And the stress gets too much to him. You get it? It's in the Pentagon. It's in the foxholes. I remember I came to Camp Pendleton for years on Saturday nights at Edson Chapel. In one year, we saw 5,000 decisions for Jesus as it was really exploding in Iraq and moving over to Afghanistan. All young boys. Sad. But I heard a man that was 86 years old last time I saw him and spoke with him. He was a hero from one of the survivors of Iwo Jima. He said, I am a foxhole convert. All of my friends were killed in all the foxholes, including the one I was in. And I cried out to God, if you can forgive a sinful man like me, I'll serve you the rest of my life. And there he was at 86 years old telling 18-year-old boys, you're going to make it, but you should go with God. We're going to make it if we stay with God. But we turned our face against God. We've slapped him in the face. We have turned to foreign gods. We have turned against our children. We're operating on children and people that will never feel pleasure again because they thought or they were told that they were somebody that they aren't inside of them. That's called a demon. We have called good evil and evil good. They're suing the largest Christian university in America, Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, the federal government. $35 million. And what they're being charged with, Yale or Harvard and others have been charged with the same thing and had a $2 or $3 million deal. But they want to bust this large Christian college. When I was a brand new Christian, 1970, I read the Bible every day. 5, 6 hours a day. I just poured through it and memorized it, and it healed my brain. And I came to Timothy, and Paul said, in the last days, there'll be traitors. And I thought, that would never happen in America. Geez, what is he talking about there? And I see some of the people that are leading us, they're traitors. They've turned against us. They've turned against the Constitution. It's serious. And the people that are restructuring are the people that have crushed souls all over the earth. We can't go down without a good fight. I don't care how big you are and how big the door is you're blocking. Prayer changes things. And God will hear our hearts. If my people that are called by my name will humble themselves and seek my face and call out to me, I shall hear their prayers, and I will heal their land. More people are looking for the return of Donald Trump than they are for the return of Jesus Christ. And that's a sin in the church. Only God, the one we love and serve, he's the power. He holds it all. Thank you for this privilege. I'm sorry I went a little bit long. You look like you're just hanging out of the rain and you need a place to be tonight. And I've been in these meetings. It's been 6 months since my last smoke or whatever. Yeah, sure. Yes.
So I have 2 questions about parenting. I wanted to ask, what was your biggest piece of advice for parents, and then what was a piece of advice that you feel like you learned later on in life that you wish you had implemented earlier with your children?
I didn't hear all that. There's two parts to it, wasn't it?
What is your biggest piece of parenting advice, and what is
parenting?
Yes, and then your piece of advice for that you feel like you learned later on that you wish you would have implemented sooner with your children.
Yeah. Oh, with the kids?
Yes.
2 good questions. Yesterday, we were at the funeral of Sharon Reese, memorial service, Raul Reese's wife. We've been friends for many years. And I was so honored. Our oldest daughter is sitting next to me with her husband, who's a pastor. As a parent, I would have traveled a lot less, spent more time with them, given them all the time they wanted. Loved them all. They all were disciplined. Some are stronger willed than others. So I always dealt with them by who they were. Never tried to make them like their dad or their mom. I wanted them all to grow up and be individuals, and they are. So I probably should have, and I would have, spent more time and not traveled as much. Then later on, you say, what would I do over? Oh, okay. Well, one thing I did was every night I prayed with them. And if I was out of town, sometimes I was in Asia or somewhere for 3 weeks, I always made it up to them with time and had my calendar cleared. I read the Bible with them, and we did. This is fun for when they're little. We did plays. And I'd read the Bible story to them, and then the 5 of them would break up and go to their rooms and decide who's going to be Larry, Curly, or Moe. And Jonathan, with his white curly hair, was 5 years old, and he had a blue bathrobe on, and he was Jesus. Mindy was 12 years old, beautiful. She's laying on the couch, and he's the guy that died. And Johnny walks over to her and says, "Young woman." Then he turns and whispers to me, my wife, Sandy, what does he say? Rise up. Young woman, wise up. They talk about that now, and they're in their 40s. make those spiritual memories with them. And you can do it, that's just one way. But make life easier for them, but tough in the sense of boundaries. I've come to realize why the Lord put in the scriptures that honor your mother and father is the only verse that promises long life, is because if my sons were smart Alex and they don't respect me, they wouldn't get away with that, but if they didn't, they're not going to respect a police officer. They're not going to respect their classroom teacher, anybody in authority. They won't be a team player on Little League or basketball or football in high school and the wrestling team. So always give them the boundaries. Try to explain why. But now there are no boundaries. There's no moral code. There's no reason for a child to say, well, I can step over that line. I told you not to step over that line. If you let them do it, that'll be a bigger thing when they're 18.
Hi. I heard you say that you were in foster care.
Yeah.
And 3 of my children are currently in foster care. My older 2 ask me on a regular basis now when I'm going to pick them up and when they can return home. And I'm trying to answer this question for them. It's been 2 years, and I just want to see and understand from their perspective what it is that I can say that will mend their hearts, because my daughter tells me that her heart is broken, and my son keeps saying that it's taking too long.
How old are they?
So the 2 that are asking this of me, they just turned 4 and 5. And my youngest one that's in foster care is 1.
I'm sorry. Well, my first concern is you more so than them. I had to look back after my mother died at 92 and realize she had a really rough life. She chose it. Her mom was a Christian. Her dad died when she was 4. He was a minister. But she didn't want to be a Christian girl at 17. She left home. And then I began to put the pieces together. A child's big question is, why doesn't mommy or daddy love me? Why don't I have a dad was always my big one. And then why does my mom not have me? I don't understand that. The 1-year-old isn't dealing with that. The 5-year-old and 4-year-old is. But you cannot beat yourself up. Please don't. Because you have the heart you have and you care, the Lord's looking after them. It made me be a very bitter person and a quick get in fights as I got older. And I never knew why I was so angry. And then I realized it goes way back to then. And when I became a Christian man, that started all going away. As I read the scriptures, I realized, oh, I'm a new creature. The old is past. You're not the same woman you were when they went. So give the Lord time. And I think we'll all remember to pray for her, won't we? And that those children be surrounded with good adults. So the way you help them is always reassure them how much you love them. Mommy wasn't feeling well. Mommy was sick, whatever story. You don't need to lie. Mommy, she needed some time. If the law is involved, you don't need to get into all the complexities, the county and all that. These people, I trust that they're loving you, and we will be back together. So always give that reassurance over and over again to them. And don't be. I can see that.
I'm never giving up.
Don't. Only the devil would want you to give up. And you're not a failure. You'll learn. All things work together for good. For those that love the Lord, they're called according to his will and purpose. This isn't good but it'll work together for good. And they'll learn how to love in a way that most kids they'll go to school with will have no clue when they come back to you. And then no matter what, support them. And it's whatever it takes. But be patient with yourself and trust the Lord. And then the last thing I think of is there's no temptation taken you, but such is common to all people. And God, who is faithful and just, he knows that you can handle this, or he wouldn't have allowed it. In his wisdom, this is the best for them and the best for you. And the fact that you're here in front of us, putting your heart out, I know he's working on your behalf. Yeah.
Did you mention something about spit into the eyes? When in Mark 8, it talks about that.
About what?
When Jesus spit
yeah.
into his hand.
The salve.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I like how you put it that he went a second time to make it less fuzzy. Raul Reed said this one time when he was walking in the airport and how he saw the people in the airport and how he can see the hurt, or the confusion. That second point where Jesus actually touched him again, can you expound on that as far as emphasizing that aspect of being diligent in prayer on what God will have you do? I think that's super important.
Well, I think it's important that he was very calm with the sleepyheads. He was suffering for all of us and you. He is sorrowful, he is heavy, his heart. Their eyes were heavy, his heart was heavy. I don't want to have heavy eyes. I want to have a heavy heart from the Lord. And I think that he does these stories and the parables for those that have ears can hear and those that don't won't hear. And it always reminds us, give people a second chance. Don't judge. Let him be the judge. And in our own lives, can we see things better if we prayed more? Absolutely. And if I spent more time in the Word? Absolutely. So I take those stories and I try to apply them to me. And about that story, how would that man know what trees look like and men look like, but trees blowing in the wind, unless he had had vision at one time in his life and he lost it, and he knew what the wind would look like moving something, but he paralleled the tree with man, so he's got blurred vision. That was my term. So I think that it was overwhelming that he could see, but that he had lost something. And we have an example of somebody that's lost something very dear to her, and he's going to give her a second touch. He went back 3 times in that one little 6 verses, and he used the same words. Just don't ever give up, ever. Fight to the end. Resist the devil. He's a coward. He'll flee from you. He's a coward.
Okay.
So can I tell him these 2 books?
Yes, please do.
Okay. There's 3 of them. 2 most important things in my life next to my family is the Bible and prayer. So this is like very short. You can spend 5 minutes or you can spend an hour. Just it's for people to stick in their purse or their wallet or carry it in the glove box. But to go through a consistent devotion. So falling in love with prayers, taken from a book I wrote by the same title. And falling in love with the Bible is taken from a book written with that title. But the point is, if you devote yourself daily to prayer in the Bible, you're going to be wonderfully happy. This one, Tender Touch of God, deals with perfectly for you. He touches us tenderly. He's not angry with us. He's not mad with us. He's not going to bully us, twist our arms, push us around, get us in a corner, beat us up, or torture us or something. It's a tender touch from God. When it's not a tender touch, I know it's from the man or devil. And I don't need to be pushed around. He never pushes you around. He gently touches you. Yes, sir? And you find out what he wants. But he, like she's a classic example of a tender touch. It's just obvious how much he loves you. And his heart
I
breaks.
love his gentle heart. He has a gentle strength.
Yeah.
I always love, and that's what helps me discern something that doesn't make me feel good, someone that doesn't guide me properly. I know it's not
Good.
him.
You won't find many boyfriends with a heart like that.
No, I don't. I don't find any at all.
Good.
It's not compared to
Yeah. You want to be a pastor? Good for you.
So we have something for you real quick.
Oh, those are
Those are
mine.
yours. They look like mine.
Oh, are they?
No, they're yours.
These are mine.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a shirt and a sweatshirt
Thank you so much.
for you to have,
Very cool.
and it has our logo on
hoodie.
the back. Yeah, it's a hoodie.
So I'm a walking billboard.
So yeah. So we always like to give them out to the guest
Thank you.
speakers, and we really appreciate you coming out.
My privilege.
And if you have questions for them, you'll be available for a little bit.
I should get home because my wife's gone and I got a granddaughter there. And
Okay. So, but we thank you so much for coming. You want to close us out in prayer?
Now lay me down to sleep. Oh, no. Right. Father, I see so much potential in this room, untapped. I pray that your tender touch would open ears to hear, eyes to see, and hearts that will believe. And I pray that this handful of people will start changing not just Oceanside, but America. Lord, that you'll empower them. As you even said, your disciples said, teach us to pray. Teach us, Lord, to pray. Not how to pray, but just teach us to pray. And break through whatever holds us back, that we don't see the importance of it. And oh God, have mercy on the American people, starting with the Oval Office, working its way into the Congress, the House and the Senate, Supreme Court justices, down through the states, and rebuke the drug dealers that are destroying millions of lives. Rebuke the evil spirits of alcohol that destroy families. Lord, rebuke the pornography industry and the wickedness that's being spread through the internet. Protect every military man and woman that are in clandestine operations or out to sea or on the land or in the air tonight. Protect their children at home and their spouses, their mothers and fathers. Lord, please have mercy on the Pentagon and the generals and the people that make the decisions, and for the Christians that are there. May they be bold with wisdom to protect this country, the people. Have mercy and bring revival, starting with us. Oh God, pour out your Holy Ghost. Forgive us of our sins. Don't let us get sleepy-headed, heavy-eyed. Let us watch, like you said. We should have been watching him all this time and to see what he does. And he went in deeper to the garden. We need to go deeper in prayer. Help us, Lord, to surrender the time to you and use these men and women to pour more love out to the hearts of the people in the grocery stores and on the restaurants and everybody they walk by. Give them opportunities to share Jesus and meet every need that is here and heal every broken heart and remove every iota of PTSD or bad memories. and bless these three beautiful children. Let your holy angels stand beside their beds at night. Take the broken hearts that we just heard about of these little kids and heal them. And bring the joy of living with their mother back. And give her the strength to wait on you. And help the mending in her heart. In Jesus' name we pray.